ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you here as we get set for race number 10 of the season for the SARG Superspeedway Series. Continuing on the playoffs here tonight at the Daytona International Speedway. I'm Seth Cole alongside Tyler Riggs. And Tyler, we've seen these guys here in the regular season, how aggressive they are trying to get playoff spots. But now the battle for the championship is on. So you just kind of get the feeling here at the World Center of Racing. The aggressiveness is going to ramp up even more.
Oh, yeah, we saw plenty of that 2 weeks ago in round one. Just wild last half of that race where, there was guys that were in the playoffs, guys out of the playoffs, making all sorts of moves, trying to just get that win and get the most points possible. And there were definitely a couple of winners and losers from that. So we'll see how some of these guys adjust going forward into the second round now.
Taking a look here at our starting lineup for this one. And on point, we've got Darling, a playoff contender. Lucas Cram, they're a playoff contender. I know that a lot of times drivers say they want to start up at the front at these super speedway races, but based on what you've seen here this entire season, do some of these guys back here, these playoff contenders in the midway portion of the field, should they be worried?
It's tough, Seth, just because, everybody kind of marches to their own drumbeat at these super speedways. Now, I will say, if you are one of these playoff contenders from what we've seen, not even just in the playoffs, but so far in the regular season, you want to be up there and get those stage points. You got one stage to work with in terms of that, and so that's a big opportunity. Guys like Brandon Hoff and Nick Olson, Lucas Cram that are second, third, and fourth today in terms of starting, they've done that, maximize those opportunities throughout the season, and they find themselves in a good spot to be championship contenders. Whereas you have a guy like Jared Darling, this is his first pole of the season, Seth, and he has kind of taken the route at times to kind of hang back just a bit. That being said, he was one of those guys that round one of the playoffs, Seth, cranked up the intensity, and it did him very well in terms of the gain. So it's no surprise to me that some of these guys, especially playoff contenders, realize that probably the best way is to be up front.
Now, coming into this race, this is basically for a lot of these drivers an opportunity to be able to combat a little bit of a struggle that they may have had last week. Some drivers coming into this race 20 or more points back from the points lead. Looking at guys like Robbie Lyons, Blake Trawick, of course, our pole sitter here as well, Jared Darling. So it'll be interesting to see what their strategy is going to be, of if they're going to try and keep themselves up here at the front, if they're going to ride at the back in at least the early stages of this race. But you bring up about those stages here too. And the thing with the stage racing is usually what we end up having is like 2 or 3 races in one race, because everybody that's just outside the top 10, they're trying to fight tooth and nail to pick up 1 or 2 spots to get that very valuable stage point.
Yeah, no doubt. This is no different in that sense. There is only, so to speak, kind of one opportunity at those stage points, but with the way this series does their pit strategy, if you will, to limited fuel, it definitely creates a race within the race. We know probably about lap 20 is going to be the hot spot for green flag pits if we go that long to start out this race under green. And then from there, it's all about jockeying for that first stage. And we've seen it time and time again. It's just cranked up more and more as we gotten into the playoffs in terms of, guys really watching their moves and, doing all they can to be up there. And so even the guys that ride in the back, the first half of the stage or whatever, find themselves up there at the end and just try to make it dicey.
There's a lot of times that series will have their playoffs at a super speedway, whether it be Daytona or Talladega. Obviously in the title, it's a super speedway series. You're at a super speedway every single week. And so obviously these drivers have certain drivers they're comfortable making alliances with, working with. But I'm certain there's a lot of guys that we've seen working together here this season that all have those blue banners and spoilers. It's going to be interesting to see when it turns into every man for himself, as every single one of these guys that are in the playoffs want to win that championship, as we're underway at Daytona.
Nice even restart there by both lines. It looks like Darling is going to get that big push from 2 weeks ago winner Nick Olson there in that 24. Olson, Seth, another one of those guys that you want to talk about cranking up intensity-wise and trying to put himself in the right spot. He did that in round one and capitalized on it.
Car that's stuck up there on the outside line. I think that's the 16 of Ben McDonald rather. He is dropping towards the back. Looks like he may have gone up there of his own fruition, though, dropping to the back, waiting to see what happens. Is up at the front. Boy, the way these guys are able to line up the front and back bumpers of these trucks, there is absolutely no room there in between those bumpers. They literally shove each other down the back straightaway, and they do that 2, 3, 4 trucks back.
Yeah, they've really mastered the art of that over the course of the season. A lot of these guys, the Olsons, the Connor Horns, the Alex Bells, the House of the world, those guys all have really mastered that type of talent. You're seeing it from the 24 right now on that inside line. I mean, he is not letting up on that once bumper. And if you're a guy that's in front of one of those guys that knows how to do that, you got to be ready to handle it, Seth, because if you don't, they will get you out of the way. And you want to talk about alliances, guys being comfortable with one another. You do want to be one of those guys that people feel uncomfortable with in the league.
Got 12 playoff contenders in the field here tonight. Right now, half of them hold the top 6 positions, with Darling, Cram, Olson, Hoff, Lyons, and Horn all in this 3x3 for the first 3 rows, and they are side by side back around the 7th row. Whoa, got a car out of shape there, down on the apron. I think that might have been Stephen Gale in the 52 in one of the lightest plates of the track here, that tri-oval.
Yeah, it's always a dangerous spot for sure, and we saw that a few times throughout the season be kind of a hotbed of issues. But speaking of Steven and then Brett Murphy beside him, those two guys not one of those few in the top 10 that you're talking about in the playoffs, but those are two guys, Seth, that came out last week in Metallia. They're still trying to win races basically, and they were up front, in this top 10, top 5 most of the race. So you got to be watchful of those guys and what they kind of do in the early stages, because it really dictates what the rest of these playoffs.
We got a spinner back there in turn 3. Sorry to cut you off, Tyler. I'm not sure who that was, but he went around right in front of a pack of another few trucks. No caution yet, however.
Yeah, and I'm not catching that truck either that you were talking about there. I saw the person down on the apron, but thought they were going to collect it clean. Guess not.
It might have been the 4 of Christopher Tate, who is still here with the lead group. I guess he got the truck righted again, and so the caution didn't come out, but he was actually facing dead sideways when I saw him over there in 3, so I'm really surprised that 1, he was able to keep the truck going in a straight line, and 2, we didn't have a caution come out because there was a lot of oncoming traffic there.
It was actually the, looking back at it, found it was the 71 of Jordan Clark that was down off the track right there going into the corner. He came up. I don't even know if he meant to come up necessarily, but he got contacted with the 8 of Rada there, Steve Rada. So that's the truck that was sideways that you're mentioning there that wound up taking the brunt of that damage. Rada obviously not necessarily happy with that. He's got a bit of a banged up truck now. He's still running, but Christopher Tate, for what it's worth, just basically checked up big, and he's kind of caught that second pack again now.
And you can see how just a little bit of damage sustained there by Jordan Clark has affected his truck. I mean, he's all the way back there, lost the draft. And so he's definitely going to be hoping for that stage caution to come sooner rather than later, come down pit road, get that damage repaired, maybe utilize the fast repair. I don't know if he'd want to do that this early on or not, but early issues there for Jordan Clark. But fortunately, does have a little bit of a reprieve coming up at some point here at the end of this first stage.
Yeah, and really the key is when you get an incident like that early, especially in this series, is make sure you don't go to lap down. That's, the big thing. Don't put yourself behind the 8-ball. But for Clark, as you're mentioning, I mean, I don't know if he's going to, have that opportunity. He is way off the pack. He's way off anybody draft-wise. So he's kind of in that hard, tough spot early on.
Another truck back there that looks like he has lost the lead group. I think that's Mitchell Muma in the 40, and then behind him you've got a group of about 10 drivers, and these are all drivers, I believe, that had to check up when Jordan Clark was getting out of shape, and with losing all that momentum, they subsequently lost the lead pack. You got Quinn Gingrich back here, playoff contender Gavin Jones, Derek Stanley, and some others.
Yeah, a lot of good trucks back here. I mean, you mentioned Gingrich, despite not being a playoff driver, has shown some good speed over the course of the season. You mentioned Gavin Jones, a guy that Seth, he's actually probably more comfortable back here than anything. He does this quite a lot, and he kind of waits to present himself till later in the race. And then another one, too, excuse me, it'd be, oh boy, I'm trying to say it. We'll get back to that one. I completely blanked on what his name was, but, Kyle Manger. There we go. Good grief. I was getting to it. But, yeah, all those guys, very fast trucks, and just, trying to fill it out early on.
The thing I gotta wonder there with Gavin Jones, though, when the playoffs begin, the points get reformatted, and it's almost like starting over a brand new season. The points get really close again. with those stage points on the line. I understand the strategy of the 12, but at the same time, those are some valuable stage points that you're potentially losing out on, and subsequently could be translated to 2 or 3 or 4 spots that you're losing in the live standings.
Well, and to that point, Seth, last race there, that round 1 race, he was one of those guys that followed his strategy from the regular season, like you're talking about, and for it, didn't gain any ground. Actually lost a spot in the overall standings and lost some points in terms of, trying to get up there to championship contend. And folks, this is not a playoff where they're eliminated after, so many races of Will's down. Once we get in the playoffs, it is just classic, okay, from this point on, whoever gets the most points wins. So for him, yeah, he's got to be definitely a bit more aggressive. Like I said, some of these guys learned that for the first race. Jared Darling, classic example. He was aggressive in that first round, and it paid off big. He jumped up in the standings 6 spots, and now he's up here contending, for leading the pack. Got the pole, and he wants to get there and win the stage. So I think the better mindset is definitely be aggressive.
And right now, as far as the playoffs are considered in terms of the point standings, talked about how close they are with the reformatting. Right now, our top 3 in the playoff standings separated by 2 points. Brandon Hoff right now is the points leader, 1 point over Lucas Cram, 2 points over Connor Horn, and all 3 of those drivers mentioned up here inside of the top 5.
Yeah, well, and actually, just to re-update that, because that was from going into the first round. After the first round, we were looking at Hoff lost a little bit of ground. He slipped back to 4th, and it was Cram that slipped ahead for a few points. He's 4 points over Olsen and Hoff right there in terms of over Horn and Olsen right there. There goes Hoff. But, yeah, they're still all super close, within 10 points. And, ironically enough, where are they all at right now, Seth? They're up front, like you mentioned, trying to wrestle for that lead.
Yep, you're right. I apologize. I was looking at the wrong point standings heading into last week's race as Cram and Olsen continue to battle side by side. You got a number of those grit trucks up here with the 44, the 24, and the 9. And again, it's the situation, like I said at the start of this race. These guys, we've seen them all season long willing to work with each other, but at what point of the race do the alliances break off and everybody remembers, oh yeah, we're all battling for a championship here, so now I'm going to try and pass you.
Yeah, and we'll see that kind of, I imagine after that first stage, or maybe even before the end of the first stage, because like we talked about, guys jockeying for those spots. But I will say, at least the tone of this one so far, it's been pretty calm. This is a little bit more calm than what we saw in round 1 there in the opening stage. So I imagine, though, after we get to these green flag stops, as long as we stay green towards it, in about 10 laps, that's when you really start to see it crank up again.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see as well if we actually have a third lane come into play. It seems like at Daytona, it's a lot narrower than it is at Talladega. Talladega drivers seem a little bit more brave to make it 3 wide. Right now, that third line has only been utilized really for drivers dropping towards the back in the early stages. Nobody has yet really been able to go up there and get some momentum to make a third line. I have to assume, though, we start getting down to the closing stages of this race. Drivers are going to get runs. They're going to want to take that momentum somewhere, and that third line is going to turn out to be an option.
Oh, absolutely. And there is a core group of guys in here, the Bells, the Horns, Olsen, even Cram at times that will utilize that, to your point, kind of whenever they feel like it's there. And they just like to, selectively be there. And Daytona's the one spot compared to Talladega where once you get it rolling, because it is so tight to that point, is, if you get a couple good trucks up there and they're kind of squeezing that middle line, you can gain a lot of momentum with just a few trucks as opposed to having to have a whole line.
Jordan Clark is now on pit road. We saw him a couple laps ago get put a lap down. That truck obviously off the pace after his moment over in turn 3. And I was going to say, with him trapped 1 lap down, he at least would still be in line for the lucky dog. But now making this unscheduled pit stop, he's fallen -2. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a road for him to try and get back onto the lead lap before the end of this race.
Yeah, and that's tough because, with that damage that he had, basically, I think this is more so him saying, okay, I'm going to try to miss with this damage or at least get something. The good thing for him is he's not necessarily a playoff driver, so he could just play for the long haul and the win. He doesn't have to worry about that stage. And obviously he hopes he gets a caution or two, which generally is going to happen. So as long as he kind of manages where he's at, he could still be in this thing no matter what.
I'm starting to watch some of these drivers, especially down the back straightaway. They're doing what I call dancing, going back and forth. I saw Gale back there was moving around a bit. Clint Spillman moving around a little bit. I think that was Blake Trawick. I saw it just almost down with 2 left sides below the yellow line out of the tri-oval. So now all of a sudden these guys, I'm thinking that those tires might be starting to go away or something. Either that or these guys are getting a little bit antsy because now we're starting to see them seem like they want to go somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit mixture of both. Obviously, not that tires are the biggest thing at super speedways, but with the conditions these guys run in, eventually, you get a couple laps in some hard race, you start to feel a little bit of a difference. But I think it's more so the antsiness that you see Spillman, Horn, some of those guys start to test the waters on that outside line.
And Spillman's going to stay up there, looking to see if Horn's going to drift back up there as well. 67 does not bite, and so Clint Spillman, a lonely man in that third groove, going to drop back outside of the top 10. Looks like he'll slot in somewhere around the 13th position. Right now, we've got 16 drivers up inside of this lead pack, and then it's about 12 seconds back to that second group. 17th place Gavin Jones leading that pack of about 10.
Yeah, and right now, Seth, you mentioned we talked about the antsiness a little bit. Generally, is what that's causing is what we've seen kind of all season within the leaders up here. You see Olsen will drop down to take the bottom, and then Hoff's going to move up to get to that push on the top side from Cram. Then he'll drop back down in front of Olsen. They'll just keep rotating like that, probably until you get to the pit stops. And we see that quite a bit. And, it's always fun to watch because these guys just pull it off so well every time.
Still side by side for the lead, as you said. Now Olsen on the bottom and Hoff on the top side. It's Jared Darling on the inside helping the 24. Lucas Cram on the top side pushing the 9. And Jared Darling started this race from the pole, has stayed up inside of the top 5, but he's not really been able to get himself back up to the front. He's kind of boxed in right now between these guys in front of him.
Yeah, this is a comfortable spot for him. He'll usually, when he works his way up, typically to start on the pole, he'll be about second, third truck on the inside most of the time. That's just where he likes to be. The problem for him has generally been he's caught some bad breaks on those wrecks being in that spot. So it's interesting to see that he's still trusting it despite knowing, hey, I got the pole, let me try to run up front. He's kind of letting, to your point, Olsen and Hoff kind of take control of that. And something to watch here too, Seth. They're coming up on a group of 3 right now. McDonald, Rada, and Sawyer, it looks like, this lead pack of guys that are soon to be a lap down here in the next couple laps.
Yeah, Ben McDonald, I don't know if he was one of the drivers that had to check up when Clark had his near spin, but I do know he was one of the first drivers that moved up to the outside line at the initial start of this race to drop to the back. Steve Rada, of course, has the damage from getting into the 71 of Jordan Clark, and Curtis Sawyer is now actually bringing his 42 to pit road, and we actually, nope, never mind. I thought that the 71 of Jordan Clark had disconnected. He had blinked out on my telemetry, but he is still on the track, apparently dealing with some connection problems.
Tough break there for sure. That's the worst place, obviously, in these super speedways to have those connection issues. And it looks like they're going to move around these McDonald and Rada pretty cleanly, although Alex Bell up there in that third line, he finds a way around. Okay, he's safe.
Trying to test the waters there, see what kind of draft you can get off the back of somebody, I guess.
Hey, the slingshot's always engaged. You got to be ready.
So they make their way around Steve Rada and Ben McDonald. That'll be an interesting battle to watch here, closing in to the end of the stage. I mean, those 2 guys are going to be potentially battling for the lucky dog position.
Yeah, the tough part for Rada, like you're talking about, his damage is more significant to McDonald. I think McDonald could probably suck up to the end of this lead pack and might be able to kind of leave Rada behind him in that sense.
There's the 42 of Curtis Sawyer coming back out onto the racetrack. He is now going to be trapped 2 laps down to the leaders. So right now we're 19, almost 20 laps into this race. 23 drivers on the lead lap, 4 drivers already 1 lap down. However, we've yet to see our first caution of the day.
Yeah, it's been pretty tame, and they're starting, you can see now, folks, how that outside line's kind of dissipated. It's, everybody single file. We should be seeing pit stops here within the next couple laps. It's usually that time.
Now, this is going to be interesting as well because we know that pit road at the super speedways more often than not plays just as much of a factor in the outcome of the race as the racing out there 2 and 3 and 4 wide with drivers in their positioning of when a wreck may take place around them. And so we'll see if these drivers are all going to be able to come down pit road safely. It's going to be interesting to see too if anybody has like a varying strategy. Do they all come down together here in this lead pack, all stick together, or do we see maybe half of them come down one lap and then the second half come down the lap after?
We've seen both at times. We have seen them all come to one pack, and we've seen them come, 2, 3 groups at a time in that sense. So it's rush hour traffic, and if you ever wonder what it's like to get off a busy exit, you're about to see it right here as they're going to have to sort it all out. Looks like they're getting spread out. About half the group coming down this time.
It's going to be Nick Olson leading this group. Lucas Cram, Jared Darling, Alex Bell, Stephen Gale, Blake Trawick, Jeremy Jones, and Colby Wells are the drivers that hit pit road this time around. That turns the race lead over now to the 67 of Connor Horn.
Interesting to see Horn kind of split from from Olson and some of those guys, especially Bell. Usually Horn and Bell like to be able to be together in these situations. So this will be an interesting second group. Not as many playoff guys per se, but a couple big ones here in Horn and Hoff.
Brett Murphy right behind Connor Horn. Hoff there in third. Brady Floyd, Clint Spillman all staying out. Let's see if they're all going to come to pit road this time. And yep, everyone that wasn't on pit road the last time coming down pit road this time. Looks like, Connor Horn.
He had to lock it up big right there, hit the grass a bit, saved it somehow.
We'll have to wonder if he got down to pit road speed, though.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, haven't heard anything over the driver comms yet, so we'll keep updated on that. But that's, you talk about the mistakes. You cannot have them here in the playoffs in these pit road, instances. So for Horn, he maybe escaped one there. We'll have to see.
If I remember correctly, the last time I did fill-in duty for this series, it was here at Daytona, and I think Connor Horn did get a speeding penalty in that race. So certainly hoping that lightning doesn't strike twice for him, but we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, and these guys have to be so aggressive, to make sure that you don't lose time. And that's just... Oh.
I think he did. He got a speeding penalty, and Brandon Hoff got a speeding penalty. They're still on pit lane.
Oh, no, boy. That is tough. Hoff especially looked like he was clean. So I mentioned from round one, Hoff definitely lost some ground. He came down with a bit of a tough break in that race. Really, the first race he had kind of had a bad race all season long, finishing 16th. And he could not afford to have back-to-back bad races. Had one of the three guys that really had kind of the points advantage going into the playoffs over the rest of the field.
Like everything's going to cycle around with Alex Bell out in front. Woo! Throwing a block there on Lucas Cram heading into turn one. You've got a group of 5 here with Darling, Olson, and Stephen Gale. But if these guys keep racing, then that group that's single file behind them, about 7, 8 trucks, they're going to reel them in. Now the good news for the drivers of Connor Horn and Brandon Hoff, they've returned back to the track. They're still on the lead lap, but now their goal is to make sure they stay at least on the lead lap until we get to that stage caution.
Yeah, and there's some blocks getting thrown right now. My goodness. Olson and Cram got up there around Bell and Darling and just kind of planted themselves on that inside line. Then you mentioned, people trying to stay on the lead lap right now, but these groups starting to form together. And this jockeying that we were talking about kind of after the green flag stops, where guys start looking a little bit more aggressive, it is on.
And no way that Lucas Cram was able to throw the block there as Nick Olson jumped up to the top side just before the start-finish line. Jared Darling was right there with him. Olson says thank you very much. Now he'll tuck down in front of the 44 on the inside line.
Got a couple other new faces in this kind of front pack that we didn't see at least before the stops. Colby Wells in that 45 at least moving his way up in the front pack, trying to plant himself in the top 5. We see, I mentioned Kyle Manger earlier, who was kind of back there tail end of the first group at one time, maybe in that second group. Now he's tail into this first group, trying to work his way up. And these are the guys, Stephen Gale as well, also in the top 5, but that will really try to decide things in terms of, what's going to go on.
That third car on the outside line as well, Lucas Strayer, first time he's been up inside of the top 10. And going back to Colby Wells there, running currently in 4th. The whole time we had those 16, 17 trucks running in that lead pack, he was the caboose on that train. Spent most of the time running at the very tail end of the lead pack. Now he's up here trying to push Jared Darling to the lead.
Just might do it. They've got a good connection going on, although Cram and Olson there on the inside, very, very good together. And you throw in Alex Bell as well on that inside. It is a very tough challenge to get past those 3.
They are side by side still all the way back through this lead pack. Now we currently have, I believe, 13 trucks up in this lead group. The field is broken up even more so than it was prior to the pit stops. Jeremy Jones back here. He's got the 16 of Ben McDonnell drafting him. He's all by his lonesome in that 14th position. And then you go back here, you got a group of 3. Gavin Jones, Christopher Tate, Mitchell Muma. They're running 15th through 17th. A little bit further back, you got a group of another 3, Derek Stanley, Kyle Dager, and Jacob McMillan. And then all by his lonesome, you've got, actually he's about to go a lap down here, is Quinn Gingrich as well as Brandon Hoff there in the 9. They've got the leaders right behind him.
Yeah, this is not where Horn, Hoff, or Gingrich want to be, especially Hoff and Horn, though, being playoff drivers. I mean, you're looking at all but about probably 4 of those playoff drivers right now inside the top 10, and 2 of them sitting right outside of it. So you're going to be one of the few trucks now that is not going to get some of those stage points. And oh boy, it is on right here, Seth. They got to sort things out quick trying to get around these guys.
That's a 42 of Curtis Sawyer that's getting out of the way of everybody as, oh my goodness, 48 throwing a huge block there on the race leaders, and they are stacked up.
Well, you talked about it. You don't want to go a lap down. You do not want to sit yourself behind the 8 ball. That's what these guys are fighting for. Oh, Olsen just tight right there. I mean, if you're Olsen, he won last week with that, or 2 weeks ago with that type of aggression, and he's showing it again here today.
Gingrich right there nearly got knocked out of the lucky dog position as he was forced down below the double yellow line. Fortunately, they gave him the room to come back up, and now it's even a worse situation for Brandon Hoff and Connor Horn, because if you're not in the lucky dog position when we reach the end of the stage, you can't rely on a wave around just based on the fact that you're going to be at such a huge fuel detriment to everybody else.
Yeah, and that's huge as well. I mean, that's what we talk about with the pit strategy. It gets crazy a bit, and boy, this pack is starting to get real rowdy again. They're weaving and snaking their way down that backstretch, Seth.
Now that 48's kind of been out of shape a few times here. The last lap is now Cram and Bell. They're going to clear for first and second. Top line is open. That's Stephen Gale and Kyle Manger. They're going to work together.
Hey, why not? Go get yourself up there, Like I said, try to get yourself a win. Doesn't matter for the playoffs or not. Everybody wants to win this series. It is, as we've seen, very tough to do. Only a few repeat winners as is. So you want to throw your name in the ring at any time.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers that when they're racing against playoff contenders, they think, I want to be careful around these guys because I know that they're big picture racing. They want to win the championship. But I think at a super speedway, you've got to put that kind of a thought out of your mind because it's the closest proximity racing to another driver in the type of racing that we see at super speedways, 1.5 mile short tracks. This is the closest you're going to be to drivers. So, you've got to have the mentality of going out there as if this is the first race of the season. Everybody's still trying to make it into the playoffs because you're still wanting to go to victory lane. And you've got to race. That's aggressive.
They scatter.
Bell saves there. 4 wide in the tri-oval.
Boy, this is messy right here. How did Alex Bell not wreck? Was getting to, we talked about the tri-oval being dangerous. Was getting a little bit of a heavy push by Gingrich there coming into it, and just about looped.
And I think that was Graham in the 44 that had to check up. No, I'm sorry. It was actually the 9 of Brandon Hoff that had to check up there, and he almost went up into another truck there through the tri-oval. They split him 3 wide. 48's back down the apron again. Oh, boy.
Yeah, that was another one of those. Nick Olsen said, hey, I'm coming down. You're going to have to stay down there. And that's, you talk about the guys kind of being aware of, playoff driver versus not playoff driver. I think the only real kind of consideration you get in that sense is, hey, is this move going to wreck us? That's about it. Other than that, these guys, as you're seeing, they're just going after it.
I think that might be Brett Murphy down there on the apron heading into turn 1. I mean, that momentum was lost by the 48 car. Had to run the apron almost there into 3 last time around, and now has lost this lead pack. And now the battle.
More contact. There goes Connor Horn.
Is a caution going to come out as he spins down into the apron area? I don't see a yellow flag waving yet. We remain green.
Single truck, and he spun inside. Him and Nick Olsen kind of tapped together, and that is unfortunate. Now there's a bit of a checkup on the inside with Darling going on, and this is just more vibrations. Oh, Will Hop Spillman into the wall.
Yeah, that was Blake Trawick that got out of shape as now Spillman tries to gather his truck back up. Almost got down. I think that was into Robbie Lyons.
and they all avoided it again somehow. Seth, we still got 7 laps now almost before the end of the stage. Not even 5 laps to go on the stage.
I mean, we haven't had a caution yet, but we've had a couple of near moments, and I think there's going to be maybe about a dozen trucks are going to have to come down and get some damage repaired in some way, shape, or form, as Blake Trawick did have the lead. Now Lucas Cram's going to go to the point, and he's being pushed now by the 9 of Brandon Hoff. And all the circumstances that just happened in the last 5 laps worked to his favor. The 48 of Quinn Gingrich losing the draft, the 67 of Connor Horn spinning around, that now puts the 9 car firmly in the lucky dog position.
Yeah, and that's huge for him because, we talked about how he stumbled in round 1, was on his way to doing that this round, but now that's, as you're talking about, going to be a big break. As long as he gets back on the lead lap, he can work with that. Although he's still going to lose some ground, obviously, with not getting some good stage points.
It's going to be interesting to see. He's right there on that outside line, trying to see if maybe he can get his lap back the hard way. If he were able to do that, that would then put the 48 of Quinn Gingrich in the free pass position, and that 9's got a big push there from Kyle Manger. Now, Kyle Manger, he's trying to push the 9 to the front. However, he wants to take the race lead himself as well, so it's kind of, I'll help you, you help me.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right, as old DW would say. So that's where we're at right here with these guys. I mean, playoff driver or not, everybody's trying to get that lead.
We got Clint Spillman back here with Stephen Gale, and I'm not certain that 88 might be a little off the pace. You can see he's got the damage there on the right rear. He did get up into the wall through the tri-oval, and we saw how just a little bit of damage affected drivers like Steve Rada and Jordan Clark, and so these trucks so aero-sensitive. Like Clint Spillman maybe having to rely on getting some damage repaired to be back up to speed. Spend most of this race up in that lead pack as Robbie Lyons in the 97 free fell for a brief moment there.
Yeah, Lyons, that's another guy, Seth, that really needs a good day. I mean, there's a lot of these playoff drivers right now that after round 1 need a good day. And I mean, we've already seen a couple of them stumble here, but Lyon, he's doing his best to try to stay on things for sure.
Yeah, right now we've basically got 4 drivers that are in the hunt for this championship as things stand right now with the points. Now you got Cram, Horn, Olsen, and Hoff. 20 points back before you get to the 5th place driver in the stands with Alex Bell. I mean, you got 20 to 44 points for most of the rest of the drivers to have to make up. Now, obviously, there's still time to be able to do it, but at the same time, there's some of those guys that just have that consistency at the super speedways. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they always seem to be up there at the end. They always managed, if they don't win, they still finish consistently in the top 5 week after week.
Well, and I think is what it boils down to is risk management. These guys are all very good. Those top guys that you mentioned, those top 4 are just the prime guys in the series of knowing, hey, this is why I need to make the move and it'll work out. This is why I need to maybe back off a bit. And we've seen Olsen a couple of times. He's still up here battling for the lead. He's almost been involved in a couple wrecks just off some of those moves, but he knew he could make them. Although they were tight, he made them and made them work, and you've seen some other guys kind of stumble at that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, too, Nick Olsen, as you mentioned, the defending winner from last week. He comes into this race currently 3rd in the point standings, 4 points out of the points lead. You would think that he wouldn't want to put himself in the position that about 2/3 of our playoff contenders are, double digits behind the points lead. But at the same time, too, you've kind of got to race as if you're not afraid. Send a message to the other drivers of, hey, I'm going to be a driver. You're going to have to go through to win this race in the closing stages. I'm not going to cut you any slack then. I'm not going to cut you any slack now.
Oh, absolutely. And that idea itself has kind of been realized more and more as we've seen throughout the season. We knew it was going to be crazy, in real life and on the service here. As soon as, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been adamant about, hey, if you want to be good at super speedway racing, you have to act like you want to lead every lap. And you can see that mentality reflected a lot.
Boy, we just saw there, kicked up to the outside line was the 9. He's going to drop back to the tail end of this pack. Now, the good news still, he's in that free pass position as Kyle Manger on that inside line, continuing to fight with Lucas Cram. And we talked about the fact that there's so many drivers here that do not have the playoff blue banners and spoilers that still want to go to victory lane. So Kyle Manger trying to be one of those drivers that he may not be in the hunt for the championship, but he wants to finish out the season at least with a trip to victory lane.
Yeah, you want to put your name in the hat of, hey, and he, to the point, Seth, he was the guy that got bumped there by Blake Trawick at the last race of the season with Treywick's heroics, be able to just barely squeeze into the top 20 and then have the win. So he probably feels like, hey, I belong in the playoffs. I know I'm not, but I need to show these guys that, I would have contended. Not only that, but for Lucas Graham in this position now too, he's got to be thinking, man, this guy's trying to take away a stage win. That's more points, that Cram's now not getting, and especially with, Haas issues and really only Olsen up here kind of with him. That's a chance to extend the gap.
I have to chuckle. You talk about the fact that Colby Wells there in the 45 was headed for pit road, it looks like. Not sure if that's I guess it's a scheduled stop here. I think what he's trying to do is, we got that stage caution coming up. He's trying to pit now so that he'll be able to stay out when everybody else pits and start at the front. But going back to the Kyle Manger Blake Treywick situation with Treywick knocking Manger out, those are the two guys nose to tail right now on that inside line.
Yeah. Talk about temporary alliances. Obviously, Treywick's probably fine right now because he's in the playoffs, but he's happy with getting these stage points. But yeah, it's what you gotta do though. I mean, you gotta work with guys you may not want to work with, or because you're not gonna be able to always find your kind of teammates, quote unquote, in these situations. And even your teammates, sometimes you have to work around, so to speak. And you see Olsen trying to dive out to that top line, but getting no help.
And the reason he's going up there is because we've taken the proverbial white flag here for the first stage. Completion of lap 40 will be the end of it. Olsen was trying to see if anyone wanted to test the waters in that high line. No takers, though, as he's going to drop back his Olsen to the 8th position.
Yeah, no harm, no foul there. He knows he's getting stage points, although definitely losing a couple spots now to Cram probably isn't great, but he can deal with that, at the end of the day.
Right now we've got, it looks like, 5 of our playoff contenders up here inside of this lead group, and all of them in line to get stage points, along with Alex Bell and Lucas Strayer right now in the 9th and 10th positions. As coming to the line, the winner of the first stage, it looks like it may be Manger. Yes, it is, barely on that inside line.
Oh boy, I thought Cram was going to get him right there in the trial. Well, just about had a nose ahead, 4 1/1000ths of a second difference at the line for the stage. Not the race, folks, just the stage.
That's why I didn't want to make an announcement there, because I was with you. I thought that 44 was maybe going to get that little bit of a run on the top side and edge out Kyle Manger, but Manger going to take those stage points. And obviously for Lucas Cram, he would have liked to have had the maximum stage points here over guys like Treywick and Darling who finished behind him, but definitely a bit of a statement here in the first half for Lucas Cram, the guy that came into this race currently leading the playoff points.
Yeah, and as we just mentioned too, with Horn and Hoff, and really Olsen there at the end, also kind of dropping back. Those 3 guys not necessarily having their best stages. Crane will take second, definitely not stage win, but gets big points advantage because guys like Treywick and Darling are still have a ton of work to do in terms of catching up points wise. But great stage, and I don't know how we did not have a single caution at that stage, Seth. That was chaos.
Some spins, but they didn't bring out yellows. And an update on a playoff contender. I mentioned Colby Wells came to pit road. No, I thought that was a regularly scheduled stop to try and flip the stage, get the track position afterwards when everybody else came to pit road. However, he's still sitting on pit lane 3 laps down. So that is not good for a driver that came into this race 11th of the 12 playoff contenders.
Yeah, and at this point, that's going to put him in almost an unrecoverable kind of points hole, if you will. So, unfortunately, I don't know what issues he had. He looked like he was an on-pace truck. Even if he did get a little banged up, you wouldn't think that'd be enough to kind of park him, but sure enough, having some sort of issues.
Looks like the lucky dog position is indeed going to go to the 9 of Brandon Hoff. So he will be back on the lead lap and try to make his way back up to the front, of course, trying to combat a speeding penalty that he got during the first round of green flag pit stops. Connor Horn, on the other hand, now trapped 2 laps down. So there's 2 drivers now, Horn and Wells, that we're going to have to see if they're going to be able to combat being off the lead lap here. But still a long ways to go. And as you said, more than likely a couple more cautions on the horizon.
Yeah, I did want to note, too, it looks like Connor Horn has used his fast repair from what I can tell, unless they really bent those sheets back out pretty good on the fenders. But that's the guy other than, Kobe Wells, that probably lost the most in that first stage. I mean, being 2 laps down now, he's going to have to rely on a lot of help to get himself back in contention. He had just worked himself from round 1 into a spot where he was within striking distance of Cram and was right there with Olsen. So this is kind of a big, tough break for him. Going to have time to make it up, like we're talking about, but he's going to need some help.
Well, Lucas Cram was second on pit road and first off. He'll be restarting the leader over Jared Darling. Actually, well, he's faking me out here. He's going to stay out there. He's still going to be the leader. Darling will be second. Kyle Manger, our Stage 1 winner, will be third, with Stephen Gale and Robbie Lyons the top 5. As mentioned, I think 6, maybe 7 drivers got some stage points there under that first stage run as far as our playoff contenders are concerned. So now, most of them managed to survive up to this point. Now what do you do in this second stage? Do you run like the first half of it tiptoeing still, or do you start being aggressive from here on out?
Yeah, and that, this is where guys have kind of varied. There's been plenty of guys in this situation that, like you said, kind of treat it as the first stage all over again, where you're kind of playing, calm until you get to that pit stop. But this is typically when other guys say, okay, now I've got to get myself up front in that lead pack, maybe in the top 5, and then, make sure you have a clean pit stop. So for probably the playoff drivers, I imagine you'll see them, guys like Cram and Darling try to do the best they can to just stay up front and keep control. But I really wonder what a guy like Kyle Manger, who, his game is just going for the win, not worried about necessarily, running 5th on lap 60. He just wants to be up there at the end for the win. So we'll have to see how they kind of handle that situation.
I'm looking at a couple of these guys that are up here right now. You mentioned Manger. We've also got Stephen Gale, Brady Floyd, Christopher Tate. These are non-playoff contenders. Do you think in the closing stages of a race that a non-playoff driver would more than likely be willing to work with another non-playoff driver more than they would with a playoff contender?
Oh, I think the answer for all these guys is probably whatever gives them the best shot to win. Because that's just
whoever's fast.
Yeah, whoever gets me up there. So
green flag in the air. We're racing to the checkers now as Lucas Cram and Jared Darling get us back underway, pretty much flipping the roles that they had at the start of this race when Darling was on point and Cram was to his outside. Things more organized for the moment on that inside line, but now we'll see if that second groove gets a run through 1 and 2 and down the back straightaway.
Yeah, Darling's going to have probably a decent push here with Stephen Gale, but Gale's, I don't know if he's really caught up to the bumper like he needs to be here, like Kyle Manger might be on that inside. And it looks like, sure enough, momentum-wise, it's going to be Cram all the way down the backstretch there.
Kyle Manger, a little bit of daylight there between his front bumper and the back bumper of the 44. Look at the third line. That's Steve Rada in the 8. Now, he is a lap machine. I believe he's trying to help pull Blake Trawick, a lead lap truck, in the 56. So that's interesting. We've got a couple of drivers a lap down in Rada, Gingrich, McDonald up here. They could be some X factors for some of these drivers as well, some of these playoff contenders.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is where kind of having those alliances or guys that are willing to work with you are big because, like we mentioned, Trawick, playoff drivers, maybe telling Rada, hey, scratch my back here. I know you're not in the playoffs, but I can make it up down the road somewhere, right? Try to make some moves. So you never know what's going to happen in terms of guys, working together and saying, okay, let's have that temporary alliance at least.
Talk about making moves. How about Robbie Lyons? Now he leads that outside line. You talked about one of those drivers that needs a good run here today after the hardships of last week. Coming into this race, currently scored, I believe it's 36 points behind the points lead. I mean, if you're going to be on the comeback trail, it's got to happen now because there's only, I believe after tonight, only 3 races left in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it is now and in a hurry, and you're right. You're basically, 2 races left after this one. We are down to 2 after this one. So, yeah, to your point, you've got to win now. There is no, playing nice and kind of hanging back, and Robbie trying to do all he can to show that. And that's a guy that's shown speeds throughout the season, been up front at times, but just also one of those guys that catches some really bad breaks.
So far, everybody looking like they're willing to play nice. Still got 35 laps to go here, and we've still got as well the potentiality of another round of green flag pit stops. And we've already seen how the green flag pit stops have bit a couple of our playoff contenders, Brandon Hoff and Connor Horn, the first time around. That's got to be such a nagging thing in the back of the mind of all these playoff contenders, knowing pit road is already struck and it could do it again on maybe the pit stop that's going to matter the most here today.
Yeah, that's kind of the big concern. You see somebody else struggle like that, like a Horn or a Hoff, and you go, man, I don't want that to be me, especially as you're talking about basically the money stop. So it definitely has a place in these drivers' minds. We'll have to see who kind of fights through that mentally. Is Robbie Lyon jumping down to that bottom line to assure the lead?
Robbie Lyon's going to tuck in front of Cram as that yellow and black truck is Steve Rada still up on that third groove. Now he is getting dropped towards the back, a lap machine right now in terms of the battle for the lucky dog position. Should we have a caution, Steve Rada does have that position, but he's got the 48 of Quinn Gingrich right there underneath him. So it's a side-by-side battle for the lucky dog. Up at the front, side-by-side battle for the lead. Lucas Graham up to the top side now on Robbie Lyons.
Yeah, almost had the momentum to kind of pull what you call the speedway crossover, right? Jump out from that bottom line up to the top and back down to the bottom. Couldn't quite do it on the last straightaway and may not be able to do it this straightaway quite yet. Needs a bit of a better push from Jared Darling there.
Update on the 45 of Colby Wells. Still sits on pit road, 10 laps down, so effectively out of this race, and more than likely, unless we end up having a big wreck that takes out a number of drivers, more than likely we'll be holding down that 27th finishing position here this evening. So obviously, as you said, there's 2 races left. It's like the midway point now of the playoffs. If a driver has back-to-back bad races here in the first 2 playoff races, I mean, do we basically say there's no chance of him being able to win this championship now?
Yeah, I mean, outside of a kind of a miracle, of everybody else wrecking, and he was one of those guys that's already kind of deep in the points.
Oh, we got a spinner back there in the middle of the pack on the back straightaway.
Might be Strayer back there.
As well as Brent Murphy and Derek Stanley.
Oh boy, Strayer is not happy because he was basically saying, hey, I dropped to the back to stay out of the miss Seth, and sure enough, he's the one involved in it.
First caution of the day for an on-track incident. Second caution, because we of course had the stage yellow back at lap 40. Looks like 3 trucks in total getting together. I think the truck I saw spun around was the 26 who ended up in the infield grass, and now we're going to have to wait and see just how much damage did playoff contender Lucas Strayer sustain.
I'm looking at the replay a little bit right now, and it might just be kind of that spoiler damage. You might got a bit lucky, Seth, by the time all this settles down. But yeah, you're right. Derek Stanley got hooked, trying to come down. I don't think he really saw Brent Murphy, and that's just kind of what started that there.
There it is right there, and yeah, Strayer, the contact is to the right rear of his machine. A lot of damage there to the left front of the 26. So 3 trucks involved in this one. Murphy, Strayer, and Stanley bringing out our first caution of the day, and now I don't think that we're in the window yet that these drivers, if they came down pit road right now, that they'd be able to make it the rest of the way on fuel.
Yeah, they'd still be about 10 laps or so short, maybe a little less, about 8 or 9. That being said, do you pit here and kind of play the mind game, or do you stay out in front? It looks like, a bit of mind games. Oh boy, they left Cram out to dry on this one.
And of course, that's going to be interesting if we manage to go green to the end, because Lucas Cram would have to come down pit road about 8-9 laps sooner than everybody else. And as we know at a Superspeedway, you do not want to come to pit road with no friends.
Yeah, and that's kind of the worst nightmare as a leader on a Superspeedway in this situation, as you saw what happened with Cram right there. If he pits, everybody else probably stays out. If he stays out like he did, everybody else pits. And now, like you mentioned, basically in the roughest spot out of anybody, barring, getting another caution. Because, yeah, that draft is huge. You want to be, in this case, following the pack, if you will, in terms of strategy.
Steve Rada was the recipient of the lucky dog, so he was able to go around and get his lap back. And with the 44 staying out, this takes away the opportunity for the 67. You see him back there of Connor Horn. He was, I think, hoping to take the wave around, but because the 44 car is out there ahead of him and a lead lap machine, he's not able to take the wave around at this point in time.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any kind of DM bartering going on, or it's saying, look, man, give me a break here. Pit for me. Just let me get one lap back. But if you're cramped, you're effectively right now with the way things have shaken out the first part of this race, probably sitting on the points leads. You got to keep those other guys behind you and maximize those chances. And he'd probably tell Connor, hey, man, that's what I got to do.
Yeah, and I mean, Cramp's been up front all day. I don't think he wants to put his truck back in traffic, back in danger.
I'm saying that seems to be where the danger is. We've seen more incidents come from that mid to late pack, or mid to back pack in terms of almost cautions.
So there you see Connor Horn as well as Curtis Sawyer. Lap trucks can come down pit road. The 56 of Blake Trewick coming back down pit road here. Looks like we got about 6, 7, 8 trucks coming back down pit road, more than likely going to top off the fuel tank here.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I don't think you're really kind of close enough to stretch it out like that. So, I mean, by all means, go ahead, top it off, do what you need to do, but I don't think it's going to quite make a full enough difference other than just to say, okay, I can pick which group I really want to pit with here in terms of, first or second group once they all pit.
Well, you had, as I said, about 8 drivers come down pit road there to top off the fuel tank. You also had over there through 1 and 2 rather, Nick Olson and Stephen Gale down there on the apron, undoubtedly clutching, trying to save a little bit of fuel. So, again, I don't think that these drivers are anywhere close of being able to make it the rest of the way on what they've got in the tank, but then again, maybe they know something we don't know.
Well, the something we don't know is basically, hey, they could lag 20 seconds off the pack as long as it means they don't have to pit, right? I mean, that's the strategy. That being said, with how tight they kind of keep this fuel run, just by the settings of everything, it'd be a big time stretch if they were able to make it.
Update there on the 41 of Lucas Strayer. He is still on the lead lap in the 12th position. Actually make that 13th here for this restart. We've got 10 of our 12 playoff contenders still on the lead lap. 17th place Gavin Jones, the last of those. Connor Horn still 2 laps down. It looks like Kobe Wells has finally taken his number 45 to the garage area as we're back green with less than 30 laps to go.
And that outside line not really formed up that well. That being said, Kyle Major getting a great push for Jared Darling on that outside line. And they might have some big-time momentum as they come off turn 2 here.
Third line starting to form there maybe. That's Jeremy Jones in the 81 testing the waters. Nobody willing to go up there with him. Got a car down the apron. I think he's trying to fall to the back. I think that was the 20 of Brady Floyd that's starting to free fall there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, Darling just barely gets it down up front. Oh, man, that was tight right there.
Sometimes you let the spotter clear you. Sometimes in that case, I think you clear yourself. And that's when it gets really close.
Yeah, and these guys are willing to do that. That's what you got to do with the championship on the line for Darling. We mentioned great first round for him. Gained a lot of points, so he's saying, hey, why not be aggressive again? Get himself within striking distance.
Kyle Manger, we saw him win the first stage. He's got Alex Bell up there with him, trying to help push him to the front. I believe that's the 4 of Christopher Tate, also up there on that outside line. First time we've mentioned him up inside of the top 10.
Yeah, this is usually when Christopher Tate likes to be a bit more aggressive. He's typically one of those guys that start of the race, first stage, he'll kind of drop back and hang back in that second group or tail end of the first pack. But sure enough, now he's up there with the big boys trying to make something happen.
And fourth on that outside line, the 88 of Clint Spillman, playoff contender, who we saw get up and into the wall in the tri-oval earlier. Looks like they've gotten that right rear repaired, and he's back up here trying to make some forward progress. Got a little out of shape there, though, through the tri-oval, as now Cram drives it down to the inside. Boy, these guys, when they get cleared, they just jerk the wheel to the left, and it's amazing they don't get hooked off the car that's just underneath them.
Oh, yeah, and I've said it all season long, these guys are masters of these super speedway races. They have really taken to figuring out all the small mechanics like that, because typically, you get into these other leagues or in a public setting, so to speak, a lot of those times guys will make that move, Seth, and they'll miscalculate and cause a big wreck. These guys are familiar enough with each other and what they're doing to just every time hit that pretty much on the nose. I mean, there has been a very few rare instances where it hasn't worked out.
Ram right now has both lanes cleared. As soon as I say that, though, Alex Bell gives a big shove to the 5 of Manger, gets him back alongside, actually edges him ahead just the least little bit going into turn 1. And now the script is kind of flipped from the beginning stages of this race, where we only had about 13, 14 trucks up in the lead pack. We've now got about 16, 17 trucks up in this lead group, and we've got 21 of our trucks back on the lead lap.
Yeah, and a couple more guys willing to say at the first part of the stage, okay, I'm going to put my hat in the ring, my feet in the water in terms of this first group, to your point there. So the thing with that is, are they going to be, aggressive mid-pack drivers, if you will, or are they going to kind of chill? And it looks like, for the most part right now at least, they're, being decently calm.
And I think maybe the reason for that is, as stated, there is the likelihood that a green flag pit stop is looming for these drivers. So, the question is, which do you want to tackle? Do you want to tackle trying to maneuver your way through or stay away from a possible big one taking place, or deal with pit road?
Well, I think Brandon Hoff's answer and Treywick's answer is they're wanting to go now on that outside line, Seth. They got up there and they got Christopher Tate with the 3 trucks. Might collect maybe 1 or 2 more. A guy like Alex Bell loves being that third line. All it takes is a few trucks, and they dive it back down at this point.
Yeah, Christopher Tate left out there to dry. That looked like it was going to work, and then all of a sudden, he's waving goodbye to his pushers.
Yeah, they faked him out a little bit. Poor Mr. Tate.
Brandon Hoff, of course, was a lap down. One of the drivers that got pegged for speeding on the first round of green flag pit stops. Got back in the lead lap, now trying to break his way back into the top 10 is at the front. Jared Darling, he's got Lucas Cram pushing him. Nick Olson now back up to the outside line. He's got Kyle Manger pushing him.
Oh, and they're getting ready to get that third line formed again. Hoff, I told you Bell would like it. And sure enough, he took the bait. He's up there, and we're 3 by 3 in a good part of the pack.
And this is when our heart rates start going up as well, because this is where a little mistake could have catastrophic results. These trucks looking a little unstable there in the entrance of turn 3, trying to give enough room, but at the same time, trying to side draft as close as possible to keep their line moving forward and the line beside them falling back.
Oh yeah, and we have seen in these situations where that third line, despite not having a lot of trucks, typically has the advantage here, Seth, just because they could run a very tight line where that middle and bottom line bounce around a bit. Speaking of, there's contact. Treywick, I reckon.
Treywick around in the middle of the pack. He's going to fall into the clutches of Jeremy Jones, who gets a little airborne there. Kyle Dager, I think, got a piece of it. Nick Olson in the 24, I think, also was involved in that wreck.
Have to see here, trying to spot that. That was right. Oh, boy, a little bit of contact between Treywick and Jones to start it. And then, yeah, Olson may have been, I'm looking, Gavin Jones snuck by it. Olson may not have been as involved. Jordan Clark in the 71 chose to go to the inside, Seth, and took a hop off a bump down there.
Well, all of a sudden, after that wreck, the 24 of Olson and the 40 of Mitchell Muma actually kind of blanked off the telemetry. They're still grayed out, so I don't know if that's a connection problem or if it's due to contact they got in that wreck.
Oh, it might be a connection problem for Olson. If so, that is a heartbreaker for Mr. Olson, although he is in the pits. Hold on here.
He is back, but he's 2 laps down.
Yeah, I will spy that one out. Try to see. Yeah, and it looks like he just disappeared. So that might be some connection issues. That is a huge tough break for Mr. Olson right there.
If we can get a look here at what happened to Blake Treywick in the 56. See if we can get a good enough angle as 48 pushes up, 81 comes down a little bit. Not sure if that's what leads to this wreck or not. But, I mean, as we said, when they started going 3 wide, that's when you start to get a little bit more nervous, because the slightest bit of contact leads to something like this. And when they're 3 wide, too, there's very little opportunity for a driver that's back behind it to be able to make their way through the wreck.
Yeah, you have nowhere to really go if you're, to your point, one of those guys that's just kind of stuck in that situation behind everything. So you're just along for the ride at that point. But something to note here, Seth. This is right at that lap 60 mark, so it looks like everybody's coming down pit road to get that fuel, and it's going to be an all-out brawl here in this last part of the race now from this point on.
Yeah, fuel window is open, and I'm not certain if we're going to get a lucky dog here under this caution or not. I believe the driver that was in line to get the free pass was going to be the 48 of Quinn Gingrich, but as we're going to see here, looking at the replay again, he actually gets involved in the race. So we'll have to wait and see if indeed there will be a recipient of the free pass, or if maybe there won't be one here under this caution.
Yeah, and that would be kind of a tough break, especially for a guy like Connor Horn that, needs to get some of these guys back on the lead lap so he can get himself back on the lead lap. Although it looks like Horn may be able to take a wave around this time. So to your point, though, I'm not quite seeing a lucky dog yet.
Connor Horn, if he does choose to take the wave around, he's going to have to hope for another quick yellow to come out, because he right now has been out there for 9 laps, and we know that with him staying out, more likely he would not be able to make it the rest of the way on fuel as opposed to the rest of these other drivers. And how about Jared Darling? As I said, a lot of times at Superspeedways, we don't put a whole lot of emphasis on qualifying. I know a lot of drivers really do. They want to be starting at the front. They want to stay at the front. But you go back to qualifying, Jared Darling started on the pole, got that #1 pit stall. That might have been the deciding factor of him coming out as the race leader here for this upcoming restart.
Yeah, and I mean, Jared, kudos to him, like you're talking about, for being pretty much aggressive this entire way. Really, has put himself in a spot now where, with Connor Horn struggles, we talked about seemingly it was kind of a 4-truck race coming into this, points-wise. Now he's going to be right up there. He wasn't too far behind in that 6th spot. And, this is what you got to do, folks. If you want to win a championship, you got to make the moves to win those championships. And Jared Darling, so far today, doing.
So it looks like Blake Trawick in the 56 might be expecting a little bit more chaos here in the final 18 laps or so, as when he came down pit road, they just manually fixed his truck. Spent a little over a minute on pit lane getting the repairs done. He'll restart back in the 19th position. Nick Olson in the 24, just to update him with the connection problems he had, he is currently scored 1 lap down back in the 22nd spot, and that's definitely not something Nick Olson needed to have happen, with the fact he came into this race 4 points out of the points lead, has had one of the stronger trucks of the day, been able to work his way from the midway portion of the top 10 all the way back up to the race lead, no matter who is pushing him, and now he's got to hope that he can get himself in a lucky dog position and get himself a quick yellow to get back into the competition for this win.
Yeah, the good news is on those super speedways, at least you've always got that shot. And for him, he did have a great first stage and a great race to this point, as you mentioned. So he's not necessarily lacking on points, although I'm sure he would love to get himself back on the lead lap and kind of put himself in the spot for another win if he could.
Jared Darling going to lead us back to the green. A 3rd place run last week at Talladega gained him 6 spots in the standings, looking to continue to make forward progress in the playoff points. He'll be leading Kyle Manger back to the restart zone. Lucas Cram, Stephen Gale, and Brandon Hoff now your top 5, followed by Spillman, Murphy, Bell, Floyd, and Derek Stanley, who we saw spun out in the back straightaway a while ago.
How about this front 4 here? It's the playoff guys on the inside versus the non-playoffers on the outside, at least for those first 2 rows. Head-to-head battle, and it looks like that inside line got a pretty good restart zone.
Playoff drivers got the advantage. Darling to the lead, Cram to 2nd, Hoff to 3rd, and now here come Cram and Hoff. They're going to leave Darling out to dry on that inside line.
Yeah, those grit teammates right there, popping out, get themselves into 1-2, and then saying, hey, we'll figure it out from there. Well, it looks like Hoff wasn't able to go down with Cram, though, so they're going to lead those 2 lines.
Boy, but he got a good push there from Kyle Manger going into turn 3, trying to draw alongside of Lucas Cram for the top spot. Not quite there to the right rear quarter panel, as now Cram and Darling on the inside line get the momentum. Brent Murphy, highest run of the non-playoff drivers, currently on that inside line, scored unofficially in 4th.
Doing a good job for sure. You got Brady Floyd as well, that 20 truck on the inside, so a couple wild cards in there. You mentioned Derek Stanley. We just saw him get spun out, but he's right back in it.
Looks like the 56 with Blake Trawick back up to racing speed. He's 6th on that inside line. Currently just cracked the top 10 yet again. Robbie Lyons back there in the 97. He is back in 14th place. Lucas Strayer in 16th. Still, these guys are in the lead pack, and maybe for the moment just kind of staying in the lead pack, waiting to see what happens here in these final 17 laps.
Yeah, it's a wait-and-see game for sure. I mean, there's been some of these cautions. These guys all know they're good as far as fuel and not having to pit. So some of them kind of say, okay, we'll wait 10 laps and we'll wait for it to get to about, 7 or 8 to go. And then you say, all right, it's go time. Let me get myself up there.
Now we're looking here at the battle for the lucky dog position. Right now, Nick Olson has it. The 48 of Quinn Gingrich right behind him wants it. And then if you look a little bit further back there, you've got the 67 of Connor Horn, who took the wave around. He's got about 6-7 drivers to pass before he can get up there in the conversation for the lucky dog as well.
Yeah, and Horn's probably hoping for a quick caution like you talked about when he did take that wave around, because he's going to have to pit here again soon. It's kind of his problem with that. But no, Olson's sitting in a good spot if he can catch that break.
Back up at the front here, a lot of comeback stories. Talked already about the fact that Clint Spillman had that damage from hitting the wall in the tri-oval. You got Derek Stanley, who was spun around in the infield grass on the back straightaway. Treywick, who was involved in the last caution. All these drivers now back up here in the top 10, trying to win this race. Even Brandon Hoff having that speeding penalty, getting trapped a lap down early. Now currently running in the third position, actually leading that outside line.
Yeah, and with Olson and Horn not having their issues and not being able to quite recover yet, all of a sudden he's right there with Cram in terms of gaining a lot points-wise. So he wants to be able to cap it off with a win to complete that comeback.
Got that 15 back there of Alex Bell, and I've seen him a couple of times here pull out to that third line, but he doesn't have the usual wingman we're used to seeing, Connor Hoyne, there with him, so you have to wonder, is he going to be able to pick up a new ally here in the closing stages if he tries that outside groove?
He might be able to find a couple of allies, but I don't know if he'll be as effective. I mean, we have seen Bell and Horn, as you mentioned, just literally two-man tandem their way on the outside to the lead. I don't think there's quite that guy to do it with Bell right now in the pack.
He's going to actually jump up there to that outside line a little bit. That's, I believe, the 12 of Gavin Jones that's going to go up there with him. We'll see what those two trucks are able to do. And you see that 9 of Brandon Hoff, he gets a great run down the back straightaway, but I think the truck that's really affecting that now middle line to not make any forward progress is the 52 of Stephen Gale. That third car there seems like he really has a tough time with his car riding up, or his truck riding up there in the entrance of the corner.
Yeah, because of that, I think he's doing the smart thing and saying, hey, I'm not going to get too aggressive in that sense. If it affects the outside line or middle line now, as you mentioned, so be it. But you don't want to be the guy that causes wreck. Ooh, Spillman got a little wobbly there in that 88, had to back off.
Almost got up into Gavin Jones, who was doing a pretty good job here, locking to the back bumper of Alex Bell. Two trucks on that outside line, making some really good progress. They've gotten themselves up, at least for the moment, just knocking on the door of the top 5.
Yeah, this is how you do it. You mentioned Gavin Jones doing a good job of staying locked to that back bumper. You have to be able to two-truck tandem like this, because staying locked on that bumper and being able to utilize the side draft is your biggest factor, and they've got some help on the way. I think I see Steven Rada in that 8 trying to get himself up there along with Robbie Lyons back.
You got about 3, 4, now 5 trucks up on that outside line, but we're back to 3-wide racing again, and we saw what happened. Our latest caution was a result of tight 3-wide racing, so we'll see if these guys can give each other enough room now as we're closing in on 10 laps to go at Daytona.
Everybody creeping up there now. It's 3-wide. Everybody's getting antsy. Talk about the intensity coming up. I mean, this is where it's going.
Right now, that outside line has been able to work up to around the 5th position, being led by Alex Bell, but it's still side by side for the lead between Cram and Hoff. It just seems like neither line's able to get the advantage. They remain deadlocked for that top position every time they come back around to the start-finish line.
Yeah, that's really because we mentioned, Steve Miguel in the 52, but also a lot of that shuffling going on about row 4 on, row 4 or 5 on. It makes it to where neither line can get the big momentum. Like, talk about, Murphy getting a little loose. Oh, there he goes.
Oh, they're going to spin around. I believe that is Brent Murphy that is spinning in front of the pack. Caution is going to fly for the 4th time here today. Smoke erupting from underneath that number 11 truck.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, Seth, if Murphy hit off the apron or what, but he got wobbly right in the middle of the quarter, bounced up off Kyle Manger a bit, and just, yeah, got spun around right in front of the pack. Looks like Nick Olson maybe got involved with that. Oh, boy, that means no lucky dog for Nick Olson if that's the case. We're going to have to monitor that one, but I will say that probably should have collected more trucks, but didn't. So a little bit of a break there in that sense.
Almost looks like here that Stephen Gale, we were talking about how his truck looked a little bit out of shape. He might have come down and might have been a little neck code there into the right rear quarter panel of the 11 of Murphy, which then sent him up into Kyle Manger.
Yeah, just one of those situations. You mentioned, though, that the tight three-wide racing, there's no room for error, especially here at Daytona when you're that tight 3x3 and, one little slip up, that's all it takes. You get a big wreck, or what probably should have been a bigger wreck in that sense in this case.
Another angle of it there. It almost looked like for a brief moment they were going to save it, but then I think the 11 overcorrects and he actually gets hooked by the 20 of Brady Floyd, sent up into the outside wall, and hard impact for Brent Murphy, who is going to have to come down pit road, more than likely going to, I would think at this point, utilize that fast repair, but boy, that's a tough break there for a guy that spent most of this race up inside of the top 10, and now if you're Connor Horn, this is the caution you were looking for, but the scenario of being able to come to pit road, get the fuel you need to make it to the end, get the caution to come out, get back on the lead lap, and then fight your way up through the field back to the front. There's just not enough laps, I don't think, to be able to have that kind of a scenario play out.
Yeah, I mean, as to your point, it's a long shot for him, but something to note, it looks like the 24 of Nick Olson might have escaped a bad break. Looks like he did get that lucky dog despite looking to be involved in the wreck there with Mr. Murphy.
So we'll have to see if that 24 of Nick Olson can fight his way up to the front with what's going to be less than 10 laps to go. With getting the lucky dog, it looks like he'll be starting back around the 20th position for this restart. And it's one of those things where you can never say never. We know he's got a strong truck, and we've seen before drivers be able to work their way from outside of the top 10 up into the top 5 and sometimes in the conversation for the win. I mean, I go back to Blake Trawick's win the last time we were at Daytona. He was running 8th coming out of turn 4. All the wrecking that took place, he emerged as the race winner when we got to the start-finish line.
Yeah, Seth, to your point, you really don't know where you're at in terms of a chance to win the race until we're coming off 4 on the white flag. I mean, that's just how it is at these super speedways. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in 20th. As long as you're part of that lead pack, you always got a shot. So I do imagine 24, you'll see him be pretty aggressive on this restart. I think might also have a fast repair in his back pocket. We'll have to see if he uses that under this caution. So far, it's just been catching up to the pack. So, yeah, it's going to be all hands on deck, and it's going to be a shootout.
Brent Murphy still sits on pit road. Damage repair underway on that 11 machine. Also, we mentioned about the fact that Nick Olson had connection problems and lost some laps. Mitchell Muma actually had connection problems at the exact same time. Now, Mitchell has not been able to come back from that. 2 laps down, currently scored in the 24th position. But right now, 26 of the 27 drivers that took the green to start this race are still running, with Olson now getting the lucky dog. 20 of them will be scored on the lead lap when we go back green, which looks like it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of about maybe 7 laps to go.
And there are green-white checkers to work with as well, so still got a little bit more time than I think people think right here in this race. But oh man, Seth, gloves are off right here. I'm interested to see what that one of Jared Darling decides to do. We've mentioned how he's kind of comfortable riding, about second or third in that inside line. Is it now time for him to say, okay, Hoffenheim, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to, take that lead back finally?
Yeah, but I would have to think that's the toughest spot to be in because you're basically boxed in. You can't go down below the double yellow line, but you're going to have a truck to your outside, so you can't go up there, to that second groove. Maybe you could force your way into a middle line and try to go up the middle, but that's also risky. So I think right now what the hope for Jared Darling is that those 2 trucks ahead of him, the 44 and the 9, get themselves lined up nose to tail, and then maybe he can find a lane either to the outside or the inside line, depending on which lane those 2 trucks decide to take.
Yeah, and, it's really, you probably take the inside line, right, if you're Graham. Other than that, it's going to be a drag race off too. Who's going to get the better push? It's going to be Manger, it's going to be Darlin. Who gets that big push right here? And we've seen the 5 be the big time pusher, I think, out of the 2. So that'll be interesting to know.
Well, Lucas Cram is one of 3 multi-time winners on the season, joining Nick Olson and Connor Horn. Cram's 2 wins at Michigan and Talladega. He's yet to win at Daytona this season. He gets us back underway with 7 laps to go.
Even restarts by both the inside and the outside. Who's going to have the big push? I see the 5 hooked up to the 9, but Darlin in that 1 also getting a good push for Cram on the inside.
Off had the advantage going into 1, but yes, that inside line does have better speed through the center of the corner off. We'll now see if the outside line can combat it down the long straightaway as, got a car a little bit out of shape back there. I think that might have possibly been, it might have been the 15, but no, I think actually it was the 21 of Jacob McMillan. They all keep it straight for the moment.
By 2, and Seth, that 15, Alex Bell, by the way, that's a guy to watch right here. He's one of those guys that he's not afraid to make moves. He's got to make some points up. He needs a win.
And right now, of our playoff contenders, all of them with the exception of Connor Horn are on the lead lap. Connor Horn right now is in the free pass position if we were to get to caution, but he needs that caution to come out sooner rather than later, and he needs to make sure he's not involved in it.
That's the toughest part right there, making sure you avoid the carnage in case that caution does come out. Try to see where Olsen is. Olsen's still mired a bit back in the back part of that front pack.
See him right there, the 24 car, trying to make forward progress after getting back on the lead lap. Right now, scored in the 19th position as, third lane possibly forming there. That's Robbie Lyons up on the top side. Nobody going to help that 97 as he's going to start free falling towards the back end of this lead group.
Yeah, that's tough there for Robbie. I mean, got to have friends in high and low places, and unfortunately for him, doesn't have any right now.
Oh, look at this. Nice crossover to the top side. Jared Darling going to jump up in front of Brandon Hoff, hoping that he's going to help push his Hunt Brothers truck to the front. Behind them, you got Kyle Manger. You've also got Stephen Gale trying to make the outside line work against Lucas Cram, Alex Bell, Gavin Jones on that inside line.
Yeah, Bell just about in turn 1 and 2 there put Cram sideways, but they stayed off it. Look at this outside line, though. Great push, great momentum. Jared Darling to the lead.
Darling to the point. So far this season, no driver has been able to go coast to coast, win the pole and win the race. Darling's trying to be the first here tonight at Daytona as Stephen Gale kicked to the outside line courtesy of Clint Spillman. He's going to start falling back now as they remain side by side for third. Top 2 look like they're going to be clear going into 1.
And that's the unfortunate part about being a non-playoff driver in this instance. You're going to get no breaks at the end of the race here in terms of getting to stay in line.
Losing in on the end of this race, maybe, if we may have those green-white checkers to lean on here, as there'll be 3 to go next time by. I thought Steve Rada was getting spun. No, that was just an aggressive move from the low to the top side down the back straightaway.
You're going to be seeing that here at the outside lines, getting ready to form. That 3 wide's coming. I don't know who does it first. Bell's stuck on the bottom. Maybe it's Spillman that at 88 and Treywick. Maybe they duck up high. I don't know.
There's a little bit of daylight there between the 15 and the 12 on that inside line. Actually a gap as well from Jones back to Tate, so I don't know if that inside line's going to get the momentum they need here going into turn 1. If that outside line can formulate themselves, they may have the better run off of turn 2.
Lucas Cram, that 44, though, doing a lot of work. He's trying to get himself to the outside line. There he goes. Going for that Speedway crossover, as I call it.
Little surprised there that Jared Darling didn't actually jump up and try and block that. That's about the second time the 44 and the 9 have worked that same move on Jared Darling, and Darling has seemed to be kind of caught flat-footed both times.
Yeah, well, it's so tough to predict, Seth. I mean, you could wait for it all you want, but until that move happens, it's so hard to react to it in the heat of the moment right there.
48 was looking to the inside back there. That was Quinn Gingrich. I think that's actually a battle for the free pass by. Yeah, he was trying to get to the inside of Connor Horn for the lucky dog position.
I mean, battles upon battles going on here in the last 2 laps of this one. Look at this push by Jared Darling. Is he going to try to use that same move that Cram used on him?
We nearly had a wreck there in turn one. Jeremy Jones almost went off the nose of Lucas Strayer in that first corner, but they do manage to keep it together. Question is, can they make it back to the white flag? Because if they do so, they race back to the checkers. If the caution comes out between now and the white flag waving, we're setting up for an overtime green-white checker.
They're looking good so far. We'll see if it holds. Let's see if Darling jumps to the high side. Oh, blocked there by Cram.
They're going to try and make it back to the start-finish line, and they will do so. Darling on the top side, big push. He's going to lead that lap, but will he lead the next one?
Almost got pushed out of line there by Hoff. He had to bring it back down quick. And now he's in probably the catbird seat on the outside line. Ooh, outside line breaking up a bit back there about the third truck in line. Oh, they're tapping. There they go.
Oh, hard hit. Car way up into the air there, flipping and barrel rolling. That's the 20 of Brady as they're still racing back to the start-finish line. Darling on the top side. He's got Brandon Hoff. There's 3 trucks on the bottom with Cram, Bell, and Jones.
Inside's got the numbers game, but let's see if the outside get the momentum. Oh, neck code. Well, not even neck code, but a little bit of contact, and there they go some more.
Here goes Brandon Hoff. Can he get a run coming to the start-finish line? They continue to wreck down through the tri-oval. Hoff jumps to the top side. Not going to be enough. Lucas Cram is going to pick up the victory, his 3rd of the season.
Oh, my goodness.
And they're still wrecking across the line.
They delivered again. These finishes have been absolutely insane, and you got to feel for Jared Darling right there, Seth. Felt like probably he was in the driver's seat going into that last lap. And what I tell you, you don't know your chances until you get out turn 4 all the white flag lap.
Man, Lucas Cram came into this race the points leader. Minuscule points over Horn, Olsen, and Hoff, but he will at least grow his points lead a bit heading into next week here as the playoffs continue. 3rd win of the season, and we got a lot to look at here on that final lap, beginning with the wild airborne ride of Brady.
Yeah, Brady Floyd got kind of suddenly signed up for the NASA space program. He took a flight, as you mentioned, got hooked in that sense, and just, he was gone.
We'll see where the initial contact was there, as he was actually on the inside line going through turns 1 and 2, and saw that 81 of Jeremy Jones was out of shape. It's hard to tell if maybe the 56 of Blake Trawick might have come down a little, maybe the 20 came up. Wild ride there for Brady Floyd as the truck continues to flip and barrel roll, making its way down towards the inside. Had a couple of other trucks collected up in that. Looked like Robbie Lyons in the 97, Kyle Manger in the 5 also collected up in that instant off of turn 2.
I mean, it's just wild. I mean, we went from a full pack going into 1 and 2, Seth, to just down about 2 trucks at the line right there. It is just, it's what these guys do, though. They lay it out on the line every week, and you just want to be the guy that, survives the chaos at the end. Man.
Here's the incident there in 3 and 4. Jared Darling put into the wall. He bounces off of Jeremy Jones, then bounces off of Gavin Jones. Kind of the pinball in this situation as, oh man, Steve Rada, full speed, trying to pick up spots to the start-finish line, clobbers him, and then Rada's going to get nailed. Hard to tell. I think that actually might be the 71 that got him.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was the 71. Everybody in that instant, Seth, just says, "Hey, pedal to the metal. If we have to blow through a few trucks right there at the end, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do."
You close your eyes and you hold down the throttle. That's all you can do in that situation. But man, amazing that they were able to get back to the start-finish line for the white flag to be displayed. But then once that white flag was out, all bets were off and absolute chaos happening behind Lucas Cram. But he's going to reap the rewards here tonight. Not only his 3rd win of the season, but going to continue to extend his points lead. And I don't know, do we call this maybe a statement race by Lucas Cram, kind of based off of what Nick Olsen was able to do last week to start off the playoffs? Cram is saying, yeah, I realize that you're good, but I'm also going to be one of those guys that's going to have to be contended with for this championship.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, and now with, Connor Horn not really getting the stage points at the first part of the race, and Hoff not getting those stage points despite having a good finish here at the end, and then Olsen having his issues. Seth, you talked about at one point the consistency, right? Lucas Cram has been, outside of Brandon Hoff, the most consistent guy in the series. He's the first 3-time winner of the season. So, yeah, I'd say big time statement win. It's going to reflect that when we look at the updated unofficial points here.
And as we're looking at the results, obviously a lot of our playoff contenders finishing well. Hoff in second, Alex Bell in third. Lucas Strayer, good comeback run for him after getting involved in a wreck earlier on, gets sixth. Nick Olson battles back from the connection problem he had. Eighth place, Gavin Jones ran towards the back most of the beginning stages of this race. He'll finish ninth, but then as we start working our way further down the running order, you start to see drivers that maybe starting to fade out of the championship picture. Jared Darling, as mentioned, was running about third, fourth place there through 3 and 4, finishes 14th. Robbie Lyons in 17th. And maybe the big one here tonight, Connor Horn, was unable to get back on the lead lap, finishes -1 in the 22nd position.
Oh yeah, well that compounded with the no stage points, at least for Darling's case, right? Obviously, he had a strong stage and was able to kind of bounce off that a little bit to make up for the 14th position. But in Connor Horn's case, just a double whammy: no stage points, no good finish at the end of the race. So he's probably going to be the biggest loser of that original four coming into this race after round one.
Let's see if we can get a word with our top three finishers. Playoff contenders, the lot of them. And let's see if we can kick things off with the driver, the number 15, Alex Bell. Hey, Alex, it's Tyler and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network Studios. You got us?
Sir, how's it going?
Well, it's going great for us. Man, what a crazy last lap there. Came down to about 5 of you heading into turn 3. Then there was about 3 of you coming off of turn 4. What little more do you think you needed to have there to be able to get yourself around not only the 9, but also that 44 coming off the final corner to pick up this victory?
Man, I don't know if it was the setup or the weather this week, but it was really, really hard to break clear of lanes today. It was log jam pretty good. I had a really good chance off turn 2. I don't know what happened to the 1 and the 9, but I almost, by like half a car length, almost cleared the 1. But that was about my only chance. I knew I couldn't really do much of anything to get to Lucas if we were going to stay locked in side by side like that. Really sucks that Netcode had to basically ruin that finish. That really sucks. That was going to be a good one there.
It was interesting. I was asking Tyler who was going to be the adventurous one to go up to that top side, and he, with no hesitation, said that 15 of Alex Bell. He also mentioned the fact that you and Connor Horn seem to do that quite a bit here in the Superspeedway series, but Horn running into some issues on pit road. How difficult was it to kind of find another wingman that was willing to go up to that third lane with you?
Yeah, honestly, no one else really helped me out that much. About midway through the race, Gavin got up there with me, but it was just us two, and we couldn't really make much ground. But he was about the only one willing to really go with me. So it is what it is, though, man. You gotta adapt to the game. Gotta adapt to the people around you. Sometimes the top of 3 can't always work.
Alex, looking at the bigger picture now, kind of going on into these last 2 races, you're one of the guys we didn't really kind of highlight as much in terms of being able to really jump up in the points tonight. But with how things shook out there in the back half of the race, especially, you might be sitting in a spot to where now, you're within striking distance a lot more than you were coming into these, next 2 races. So is it going to be, you're trying to set yourself up for, doing kind of what Darling did, where you're trying to lead all night if possible?
Yeah, I can try my best to be at the front of these races, but when your competition, mainly Brandon and Lucas, are up there as much as anyone else, it's really hard to make ground. It really comes down to where they get caught up in a wreck or a mistake like Connor did tonight. Yeah, it's going to be hard to do it. It's going to be really hard, but I'm not anything short of a challenge.
Well, Alex,
there you go.
Well, Alex, a great run for you here tonight. Nonetheless, came into this race 20 points back, and this will certainly keep you up there in the conversation for this championship. Still, the only 2 races left to go. So, do you think the consistency is still going to keep you in the conversation when you get to the finale, or do you think that more than likely it's going to take a win to get you back in this championship battle?
It's going to take stage points, poles, wins, about everything you're going to take, because you're not going to outrun Brandon or Lucas. So it's going to take complete domination. We're going to have to go out and do that the next 2 weeks.
Well, great run for you nonetheless here tonight, Alex. 3rd place performance amid the chaos of that final lap here at Daytona. We're going to turn the microphone over to you now. Let you do some shout-outs.
Obviously, shout out to Robbie, Lucas, and all the guys that put on this awesome league. So much fun. Shout out to you guys for the awesome broadcast. I love being interviewed by you guys. Shout out to my friend Keith Merrick and his brand at the Diecast Dude. My friend Jesse Pearson and his brand Polar Pierce.
Well, that's Alex Bell, third place performance here tonight in the second playoff race of the season. Congratulations there, Alex, and hopefully this is a sign of the consistency that maybe we'll see in victory lane for a second time this season, maybe in the next 2 weeks.
We're going to give it hell, buddy. Thank you.
Let's go down now so we get our second place finisher, maybe the one driver out of the top three that had to really overcome adversity today, and that's Brandon Hoff. Hey, Brandon, it's Tyler and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
I do, loud and clear.
Well, man, this is why at the Superspeedways we say you can never give up. We saw you have that early issue with the pit road speeding penalty, got trapped a lap down, but then got the lucky dog. How difficult is it to maneuver your way from the back to the front at a track like Daytona, which is usually one of the more narrow Superspeedways?
Yeah, it wasn't easy for sure. I knew I kind of wanted to be aggressive tonight, knowing the points deficit. I wasn't far back, but I know after tonight it kind of grew for Lucas, especially winning the race. So I just kind of wanted to run up front all night, and I was hoping for stage points, but that never happened because of my speeding mishap. That was my fault completely. I just had a bonehead move. I don't usually speed on pit road, and that just I don't know what happened. Just unfortunate. But even fighting for the lucky dog for a while, I was trying to stay ahead of, I think it was Quinn at the time, and then I saw Quinn kind of got wrecked or whatever. And at the end of the stage, I just backed out, and I'm like, all right, I'll let these guys race it out, and I'll just get the lucky dog. But then I lost the draft. And then I finally caught the caution, like 30 to go, and then I'm just like, all right, I'm going to the front. So wasn't easy. I was fortunate enough to be in front of most of the wrecks tonight. I really didn't have to deal with avoiding that. The only thing I really had to deal with was trying to lead laps and, get to the front row of that double file. But it was a good race up front. I enjoyed it. I don't know what happened that last corner. That was kind of crazy, but I'll take a P2 any day.
Yeah, it looked like it actually was some netcode that took place there. But, I mean, let's fast forward there to that final lap. I mean, it came down between you and the 44 coming off of turn 4. And we saw you be able to make a little bit of a slingshot move there to the outside. Did you have to be more closer to his back bumper, you think, for that slingshot move to work to make it a close photo finish?
Yeah, definitely. I was telling Lucas just now, I just didn't have the momentum. And I went high going into the tri-oval, and I got a little bit loose and I lost 4 miles an hour, so it wasn't going to work out. But yeah, if I was closer, I might have been able to get him. I would have probably made my move sooner too. Maybe not literally going into the tri-oval, but maybe a little bit sooner. It just wasn't enough. And plus, I was a little, I was a little flustered with what happened in 3 and 4 because I narrowly missed that, and I just wasn't expecting Lucas to be the only one in front of me. So I kind of was struggling where to go. But, he did the right thing. He moved a little bit high, and I tried to go high, and I tried to make it work, but it didn't. That's typically what you see at these superspeedway races. The slingshot move coming to the line, hoping it works, but it didn't tonight, and, it is what it is. I could have used the win, but Good for Lucas. He ran a good race.
Yeah, Brandon, the question I have for you now at this point, you mentioned a little bit there how Lucas definitely, it looks like, did extend his gap there a bit, unofficially showing about 26 points right now over you. Then Nicholas is a point behind you. So that being said, though, despite the struggles early on, like we talked about, you did rebound for the second place. Kind of describe to the viewers out there, what you got to do when you make that mistake. Like you said, one that you're just like, man, I know better than this was boneheaded mistake. How do you kind of rebound from that point and get yourself back into contention in a spot like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just with super speedways either. It's with any track when you make a mistake like that, whether it's under caution or under green. Under green especially, it'll hurt you way more than it does under caution. I really wasn't mad or anything. I just was kind of frustrated with myself. I stayed calm. I wasn't like getting riled up. I wasn't, looking to wreck anybody. I wasn't trying to make any aggressive moves or anything like that when I was a lap down. I just was going to try to at least race for the lucky dog and then, stay at the tail end of the lead lap or whatever I had to do. But I wasn't going to do anything stupid. really the main thing you got to do is just, like I said, remain calm. Don't get riled up. Don't do anything stupid, especially when you have that long of a race to go. I think we had like 60 laps or so at that point. So I knew there was plenty of time. I knew the way the season's gone, there was going to be probably 1 or 2 cautions other than the stage. So I knew I had a good chance of getting back on the lead lap. It's just about, patience. I know making those 3 wide moves you guys probably see isn't, patient self that I claim to be, but patience is key too when it comes to these races. And when you get back on the lead lap, it's not over from there. You still got to make your way through the field. So it takes a lot. It's obviously something you gotta learn. You gotta learn yourself, know where your boundaries are, and just remain calm under pressure. Really, that's all it really comes down to.
Well, Brandon, nonetheless, a great comeback run for you after the struggles early portions of this race. Second place run for you here tonight. Hopefully you can carry this momentum into the final 2 races of the playoffs as well. Sponsors, thank you. Shoutouts, what do you got?
I'd like to thank Red Esports, number 1, owner Kyle Dagger, teammates Nick Olson, Lucas Cram, Robbie Lyons, Timmy Pacioli, Elliot Henderson, all those guys over there. We're gearing up for Road to Pro this upcoming season, about 3 months or so. I like to thank everybody I worked with tonight, Clint, Luke, Gavin, everybody down there in Taco Bell. They know who they are. I'd like to thank you guys, putting on the great broadcasts as you do every week. It's fun. It's fun to listen to you guys. You guys do a great job. I'd like to thank Lucas and Robbie, as I do every week, for the great league we have here. And just like I said, got to carry this momentum into the last 2 races. And I know it's going to be tough to overcome 26 points, like you said. But, it's not over. So going to hope to maybe get a win, maybe 2. And who knows? Anything can happen.
Well, that's Brandon Hoff. He brings it home second place here tonight, Daytona. Congratulations, Brandon, on a great run. Again, look forward to see you try and carry this momentum, trying to battle into that championship picture again in the next 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And now we head down to Victory Lane, where Lucas Cram is standing by. Hey, Lucas, it's Tyler and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, man, I got you.
Well, I mean, 2 wins on the season now. Actually, no, 3 wins on the season, 2 during the regular season, and now 1 during the playoffs. And I mean, we just look at the situation of you being the points leader coming into tonight's race. You leave as the points leader with a huge margin over the rest of the competition. I think we could safely say tonight's a statement win. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would say so for the most part. Definitely got a little bit lucky there with everything that kind of happened there off turn 4 with the net kill and whatnot and the crash. But I mean, pretty much just a textbook race, really. Nothing really went wrong for me, which is obviously nice to have. Nothing really to worry about too much. For a little bit there, I thought maybe it was in a bind with a fuel strategy because I didn't pit when nobody else did there under that caution with about 30 or so to go. But other than that, I mean, just went perfectly for me. Definitely got pretty lucky there and pretty happy with that.
Yeah, we saw you lead 37 laps here this evening, but we also saw one point where a caution came out. Everybody else came to pit road. You were left out there by your lonesome. Was there any part of you was thinking, maybe there's a possibility this thing goes green to the end and I might have to come down pit road by myself with no friends?
Yeah, the biggest thing was just, I mean, obviously, with 30 laps to go, we weren't going to make it on fuel. You can only go about 22 pie tops if you really kind of work hard to make sure you don't burn it off. And so, in that case, it's just kind of like, all right, do I want a chance to get up the track position and have to take less fuel under green and save that time? Or do I just, stay up front and hopefully put myself in, a position not to get wrecked or anything? So I decided to stay out there. There's a couple guys in Discord contemplating it too. And everybody pitted. So I I think that happened a couple weeks ago. So I kind of knew from that point forward, it was just going to be, pick a lap to have us all pit that we can all make it on the window and kind of just work from there. Cause you don't want to stay out as long as possible at a plate track because of the chance of a caution coming out. Anybody that pits can leapfrog you. So I knew I was in a pretty comfortable position there. It's just a matter of if I lost the draft because I had to take more fuel there under green.
Yeah, Lucas, one thing we mentioned over the broadcast and something I kind of bring up here with you, We talked about consistency. We talked about you, Hoff, kind of being the 1-2 punch in that sense over the course of the regular season. Now in the playoffs, you've been the guy that carries that mantle, despite not necessarily being, in the spot to win last week. You still finished with, tied for the second most points, and obviously today you ran away with the points in that sense. But mentally, how does that kind of work playoff wise for you to be able to have that type of success to just be that consistent?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it doesn't really do a whole lot. I just kind of, especially plate racing, basically, boils down to it. It's the same thing every single week. So you kind of just you get in a rhythm and you kind of just work. I mean, honestly, I with the 2 laps to go there, I didn't realize it was 2 to go, and I had to look down my lap count to notice that, and then start really racing even harder. But it's kind of just, I mean, for me, it doesn't really change much. But I honestly probably think, naturally it kind of puts people to try to work against me, maybe to try to get ahead of me, which can definitely be challenging sometimes, but it's also fun to have guys race hard, and all the guys obviously can race super clean, and it's nice to kind of have incredible racing like that with with no wrecks related, for the speak. So it's definitely fun to have the consistency role, and it doesn't really get you on nerve at all to feel like you have to make stuff back. So that's certainly nice to try to keep, and just kind of keep your head down and keep working.
I'm going to piggyback just a little bit off of the question that Tyler asked you, and just ask about like the mental frame going into these final 2 races. Because as we mentioned, you've got 20 plus points on your next competitor and everybody else behind that. The consistency that Tyler talked about now heading into the final 2 races of the season, are you of the mentality heading into those 2 races of, I want to go out there and I want to win another race, or I want to keep my truck in one piece and preserve this points lead I've got because I'm looking big picture at the championship?
Yeah, obviously, who doesn't want to win, right? Definitely gonna want to set myself up for victory, and that's what you do all season. That's all you race for. So, definitely gonna try to do that, but also not put myself in any dumb position I don't need to be in. And I feel like this season's kind of gone a lot better for me in that sense, and especially with the larger fields, it's kind of harder if you do decide to back out to drive your way back up through the field if you decide to kind of ride. So, in that sense, I all season long, I've really I've just learned to keep my nose out in front as much as possible. And it's only been a few times all season I've kind of dropped out of the pack to make sure I played it safe, and usually it didn't even work out for me. So, I mean, just do the same thing. Try to qualify good, try to race good, and just make sure I don't cause anything, and can keep myself up front and not get myself in a bad spot for sure.
Well, a great run for you here tonight, Lucas. You now become the first 3-time winner on the season. And as mentioned as well, with this win in the playoffs, take a 24-point lead into next week over Nick Olson. Another 2 points back to Brandon Hoff, and then 36 points between yourself and Alex Bell. So it's going to be a lot of fun watching down this home stretch to see if you can not only get that 44 back into victory lane in the upcoming 2 races, but also preserve that points lead with the championship on the line. We're now going to turn the microphone over to you. Let's do some shout-outs.
Yeah, huge shout-out, of course, somebody showed up in race tonight. I think it was a pretty solid car count, almost 30 trucks. So that's definitely nice to have. Huge shout out to Alex Bell there, who's pushed me up until the whole netcode thing happened there, unfortunately, in turn 4. Huge shout, of course, to Grit Marketing and Kyle Dagger and all those guys. You can check them out at gritmotorsports.com. Huge shout out, of course, to you guys for an awesome broadcast. Can't wait to go back and watch it after the race. And huge shout out to Robbie for coming to lead with me.
Well, that's Lucas Cram. Picks up the victory here tonight at Daytona International Speedway, his 3rd of the season, and subsequently continues to hold that points lead heading into next week's race at Talladega Superspeedway. Congrats on a great win there, Lucas. Go and enjoy it.
Thanks, man.
And so as our coverage draws to a close here at Daytona, we've already basically talked about the situation going into Talladega next week there, Tyler, with Lucas Cram leading 20 points plus over guys like Olson, Hoff, and Alex Bell. So in these final 2 races, we've got Talladega next week. We've got the Legacy 2008 Daytona to end off the season. Of course, we saw how that played out the first time those guys were there at the midway portion of the season. But now, what's the storyline, do you think, for these guys 2nd through 4th? Is it that they have to step up, or they have to hope Lucas Cram has a problem?
Well, first off, they're going to have to be perfect. I mean, you heard Hoff right there. He knows, even just being 2nd, right, and being kind of the first in line to have a crack, he's going to have to run pretty much 2 perfect races to have a shot. It is so tough with the way Lucas has been running to make up those points. You even heard Alex talk about it a bit too. So they know they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's, and then they're probably going to have to hope a little bit, that Lucas finds a way, to get some bad luck, which so far this season, it just has not happened. He's been one of those guys that has had the least amount of incident points compared to the rest of the field, that have made the same number of starts. So that tells you right there that he's done a phenomenal job of keeping his nose clean. I don't think mentally, as we just heard Cram talk about there, that you're really going to see him do anything different. The only thing you might see different from him is maybe he makes one or two less moves just to make sure, that something crazy doesn't happen. But it's going to be a target now on his back in terms of just guys knowing that they have to be in front of him at the very least to even have a crack.
And what's going to be interesting, especially heading into Talladega next week, is the fact we saw in the early stages of this race, actually all the way up to the midway point, Lucas Cram, Nick Olson, Brandon Hoff, those grit teammates all work together. Not certain if we're going to see the 24 and the 9 is willing to help keep that 4 car up at the front here, knowing that time is running out.
Yeah, and those guys all obviously, you heard about being teammates with the grid and all that, but at the same time, they also know that when you get down to this championship situation, it's every man for themselves, right? Teammate or no teammate. Basically, the only difference is there you just don't want to wreck your teammate. But other than that, it's gloves off. So that'll be interesting to watch and seeing who will, as you mentioned, kind of still do-si-do with each other and who won't.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be heading to Talladega Superspeedway for the 4th time this season. Connor Horn, Lucas Cram, and Nick Olson, all former winners of that event, all 4 playoff contenders, all of them inside the top 5 in the playoff point standings heading into next week. But a wild one here tonight at Daytona, relatively clean for what we usually see Daytona as far as the big one coming into play. We did have a couple of minor skirmishes, but we ran the entire first half of the race without a caution. So a crazy one here tonight at Daytona, but Lucas Cram stands tall in victory lane, claiming his 3rd win of the season. Tyler, appreciate you joining me here tonight for this one.
Hey, thank you, Seth. As always, I tell people, Sam, Seth, doing a great job of making me look better. They just let me talk and blab, and they carry the rest.
We certainly hope Sam's feeling better as well. A little bit under the weather here tonight, so he will more than likely be back in the booth next week. But once again, Tyler, great to be able to broadcast with you here this evening. Thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight to our coverage from Daytona for the SARG Superspeedway Series. For one final time, for Tyler Riggs, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.